Very cool. Well, it would appear the panel is officially live. Maybe we can all just go around and introduce ourselves first of all. I'm Tenacity. I wrote a book called Family Curse Field Notebooks recently, and I'm the moderator of the panel. I live in Brooklyn, and I have 100 Google Chrome tabs open right now. Yeah, Jennifer, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I am Jennifer. I am a writer of mostly short fiction. I am working on a novel, but it has yet to see any eyes outside of a carefully chosen few. But yes, but I write mostly fantasy, mostly cozy fantasy, but also fantasy that edges toward horror. So it's kind of like both. I swing between both extremes.
Brilliant. Eugenia?
I just want to say that when Jennifer writes monsters, does it very well, very effectively. I'm Eugenia Triantafillou. I'm a Greek author, mostly of short fiction, and I enjoy writing a lot of dark stuff, horror, dark fantasy. And my latest story is out at on Tor.com. It's called Saltwater, and it's not horror at all. Well, maybe a little bit body horror, but it's kind of heartwarming, which is strange for me.
Awesome. And Helen?
Hi, I'm Helen. I am a sensitivity consultant and writer and editor. I mostly write. I write about weird relationships, and sometimes so like one of my short stories was about a meme I saw where like someone was in bed and they dangled their hand over the side of the bed and a demon grabbed their hand and then they said, "What are we?" And so I wrote a story about that. I love demons, love monsters. Yeah. Big fan of horror over here. I managed to not say anything actually useful. I'm very sorry.
Oh no, that was great. I mean, I literally love that meme. I saw that on Tumblr like back in the day. Incredible. So for this panel, I was thinking instead of doing like the whole round robin thing, we could just have some like pretty general questions and then just like have more of an extended conversation. My first prompt comes from a TikTok post I saw the other day where they'll have these slideshows of like many different like contemplative quotes. And one of them was, draw a picture of a monster. Why is it a monster?
I love that. I love that question because my favorite kind of monsters are ones that I love stories about monsters. Most of the monsters that I write are me. So I'm like, I am the monster. So I feel like the stories that I love are stories that take a monster or that take what we would normally code as monstrous, I guess, and kind of deconstruct that a little bit. And it can still be monstrous. Like I feel like a monster can still be a monster, but also we have kind of a deeper understanding of why do we consider this a monster. I love that kind. I love fiction that does that. That's my favorite kind of monster fiction.
I feel like a monster is something that we don't fully understand or can't fully predict. Because my philosophy around monsters is very much like they don't necessarily have to be harmful or malevolent or a creature. Like I very much include people in my category of potential monsters. And so I guess if I was to draw one, it could look like anyone or anything.
I agree that a monster could have like any kind of shape. I would personally have two different categories for monsters. Well, they're not exactly two, but you know, they are a bit different. Like there's a monster that is us. We are the monsters in the stories, or we have monstrousness, and there is a monster that is an external creature. And I feel like if I could draw this kind of creature, it would look sort of like an anarchist because monsters are anarchists. Like, I'm not saying anarchists are monsters, more like the other way around because they ignore the societal rules and,
Mm.
they disrupt society and they don't give a fuck about it. So, yeah, that's how I would draw it.
I think too, like, the scariest monster for me is the monster that doesn't look like a monster. I mean, to me, that's what's truly terrifying. And I think even of like N.K. Jemison's Great Cities series, where like the Lovecraftian monster is whiteness and gentrification, and that is the most terrifying monster. So for me, yeah, I mean, drawing a monster, it depends if I want it to be a sympathetic monster, like a monster I love. You know what I mean? And then it might have like tentacles and all kinds of things because I really like that. Or if it's a monster I'm truly terrified of, and that monster is going to probably look a little bit less monstrous, I guess.
I guess it's all about who is labeling something a monster. Like if the
Yeah.
story is about why do we label this kind of person a monster, then that's like a deconstruction. But then there's the story where we say like, yeah, this is what I think a monster is.
Yeah, and there's like the whole thing of like monster as metaphor as well, where like it's not about the monster. It's about what that is saying about us or about the audience.
Very true. Yeah, what would we say if we were gonna draw a picture of a monster, like, and metaphorical picture, of course, what exactly would end up on the page?
Cloud.
Exactly the same, like a formless blob that can enter anything and anyone.
Or like a mirror if I want to get poetic about it, because I think in many ways horror and monsters are very much a reflection of the self as well. And I think I've read, there's this really good book. It's called Sleeping with the Lights On, and that analyzes monsters and horror in popular fiction throughout the last few decades and how they reflect different social anxieties. So things like zombies as consumerism, or slashers as the fear of suburbia not being as safe as people want it to be, that kind of thing. I would highly recommend that, but I base a lot of my thinking around horror and monstrosity on that.
Yeah, and I think the tricky thing about imagining what a monster looks like is that as soon as you define the monster, it becomes somewhat less scary. So it's kind of what is unseen and unknown that is the scariest. And I feel like monstrosity in general is kind of it's very much used by a culture to define and also kind of reiterate what is not us. You know what I mean? Like what is outside the norm. And I'm saying like define that. Like it is not descriptive, I feel like. It's definitely like we are making decisions about what we consider to be not us. But also I feel like that's become something super amorphous, I think. You know what I mean? It's something that's like refuses to be defined. And so, yeah, that kind of amorphous blob for me is probably what would be there.
Very interesting. Yeah, I guess monsters are kind of the Jungian shadow of a society. It's like everything that's disowned by that society.
And I wonder if that's why marginalized communities so often identify with the monster, because we are often the ones who have also been disowned. Though it doesn't help that villains in a lot of formative media are so cool.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. queer-coded villains are my type, basically. Yeah, I guess being a projection screen for what the dominant culture doesn't like disowns about itself. Yeah, that definitely changes. And we were talking in the email thread about talking about monstrosity and marginalization. So what do we think about that?
It's tricky because if monsters tend to be coded as, the outside of kind of heteronormative or Eurocentric or whatever society. So those monsters can be identified with and reclaimed as a way to kind of take back the power of them. But it's tricky because if those monsters are created by non-marginalized communities, you know what I mean? Like, I almost feel like there's power in reclaiming things that were created to minimize us, but there's also power in creating our own monsters that represent all those things in the way that we want to be represented. Do you know what I mean?
I feel like in this case it would be a positive thing to embrace the monstrosity, like embracing the fact that you are different, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you are evil. But and there is power to that. There is power to fighting back to the image that the establishment has of you. So embracing the monstrosity would actually make the whole story have a sort of a happy ending.
Out of interest, have any of you seen Black Sails?
Oh, I've heard about it. It's that pirate show, right?
Yes. That has a really interesting narrative through it about how monstrosity is almost inflicted upon certain people. I mean, in that show, it's pirates are monsters to the British Empire. And I can't remember the exact line, but at one point it's if you're going to make me a monster, then I will be a monster for you. And again, that is also a show where that is very, very it's about piracy, but it's also very much about homophobia and queerness and being on the outskirts of society, and recognizing that society as the actual monster, but also thinking, well, I myself have to become monstrous in order to tackle it. I would really recommend giving that like the first season is a bit sort of Game of Thronesy, because I feel like the network was like, okay, let's throw a load of tits in it, and then we'll get the funding to make it really, really gay. But like keep chugging with it. It's really good. So yeah, I think that reclaiming of monstrosity can be a form of protest.
There's a book too that by Maria Davana Headley called The Mere Wife, which is a retelling of Beowulf from Grendel's point of view, from the monster's point of view. And she writes Grendel as stemming from a conception that occurred in the Middle East. So it's a mixed race boy. And hovering, kind of hiding on the outer edges of suburbia, of very white suburbia. And what I find really fascinating about that book is that it's not clear in the end whether this is maybe a spoiler. I don't know that I want to, but it's unclear whether this Grendel is actually a literal monster with claws and everything, or whether he's just a boy hiding, homeless boy, basically hiding in a cave outside of this newly built suburban development, kind of on the edge of the woods. And that just reminded me of that, Helen, when what you were saying about Black Sails, is that someone who is basically made a monster, and is then, kind of has no choice but to become a monster.
Yeah.
Going back to what you were saying about the limits of deconstruction, though, I guess when you reclaim a monster trope, you're basically entering the logic of that marginalization. I feel like there are limits to that, right? Like,
well, there are limits to everything.
True.
To every sort of creative thing. I think I don't necessarily think that you have to be accepting that narrative. I think you can be in conversation with it.
Mm-hmm.
And trying desperately to think of some examples. It's been a long time since I read anything that wasn't for work. Some depictions of Hades, for example, are really interesting in rejecting the common idea of Hades as a villain or as evil, because he's not. He just has a realm. His realm is just the underworld. Like, he himself doesn't kill anyone. It's been very interesting over the last few years to see what feels like a resurgence in classical myths and different takes on monstrosity. Like, even in the game Hades, you can fight. Oh my gosh, what's the name of the Minotaur?
Asterius.
Yes.
He's so difficult to beat.
I've never played it myself. I've only watched it.
Mm-hmm.
But like, Asterius and Theseus are like bros.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that's just, fighting is just what they do. And I think also, I'm gonna make another game comparison as well, but Undertale is very interesting in how it shows, like, this isn't to do with Greek classical stuff at all. Although there could be a conversation about the underworld, but anyway, the monsters in that, the mechanics of it, fighting, but basically attempting to kill you is how they communicate. But they can also talk. But whenever you first encounter one, they're going to start firing pellets or something at you, and you have to make the choice to not react to this violence, and you have to make the choice to show grace, essentially. And if you don't, you do get punished by the game for killing monsters who do self-identify as monsters, and they're all different kinds. There's like the skeletons and like a big squid and a fish lady and stuff like that. But yeah, so essentially, I'm saying that I don't think you necessarily have to accept the overall structures of monstrosity in order to reclaim them.
Undertale's another great game.
And there's also, all of the different ways that people are writing Lovecraftian horror now, from all kinds of different perspectives. And that, that originally was written. You're basically taking a construct which is like inherently racist and sexist, and homophobic, and people are writing it from those points of views. It's almost like they're kind of inhabiting the house and slowly dismantling it from the inside and making something totally different out of it.
Yeah, totally. I do love N.K. Jemison's recent Lovecraftian horror, as a New Yorker especially.
I think talking about limits is Because, as I said before, a monster does not know necessarily their limits. So it depends as an author how dark and what angle you want to choose. Like, if I want to write of myself as a monster, and depends on how much the monster wants to follow the rules. So if it's a monster that disguises as a human, or the other way around, I guess they would follow some rules, or they would have more limits because they would want to adapt in the society. But if it's some ancient evil, as we say, they might just want to destroy everything from the beginning. So, but personally, I don't think exactly of limits. I think mostly about what is the metaphor when I'm writing for. So depends on how big or how dark the metaphor is, and then the limits get pushed a little bit further.
Yeah, I guess when you write a monster character, you're basically also making a statement on what the response to a monster should be by society.
Yeah, and you can make all kinds of different statements through the different characters and through the narrative.
I mean, to me, in a lot of ways, monstrosity, I mean, and certainly in my stories, monstrosity it's almost like a decision to completely not follow the rules and just let everything out. Like just no censoring, no trying to be boxed in. I'm just gonna scream if I want to scream. And that is super it's compelling to me, and it's also something which is like tantalizing to me. It's like, almost like wish fulfillment a little bit. It's like you have this monster who can do whatever the heck it wants to do, when maybe I can't, right?
Again, sorry to bring up another meme, but like it's that thing of like, aren't you tired of being nice? Don't you just want to go ape shit?
Oh yeah.
And I feel like horror does serve as a release valve for some of that impulse, because it is the sense of like, it would be nice not to care sometimes, because the act of caring about others and having responsibilities, while obviously a good thing and something we should all do, can get really heavy. So I think maybe sometimes monsters are like a kind of freedom that is what's the word? Not controversial. It's like a harmful kind of freedom that is like tantalizing, but we know we could never and would never do it, but the thought is there.
It's like the Jekyll and Hyde, right? So you have this kind of like part of yourself that you can separate off from yourself to do all the stuff that you wish you could do, but you would never actually do. And then you have plausible deniability. It wasn't actually us doing it.
Yeah.
In that sense, it's also a little bit like a post-apocalyptic trope. Like, you dread the apocalypse, but post-apocalypse, okay, things might be very dreadful as well, but also you are free to, like, I don't know, do things, kill zombies. I don't know. Of course, if you are the zombie, then it might be a bit of a problem. But the post-apocalypse, I think, as a genre, does have a lot of horror in it, and maybe the freedom and the horror go hand in hand in general, both in the science fiction and the actual horror.
Yeah, and I think especially in the sense that marginalized people are monstrosified, like probably what the larger dominant power structure is afraid of the most is marginalized people acting in a more free way.
You're absolutely right, yeah. Because it's again about the social contract that we all have agreed to buy. So if we just, stop agreeing to it, then what could it happen? An apocalypse, for instance.
Yeah, absolutely. Stopping following the rules, basically, the rules that someone else set up.
What if that's why the Purge movies are so popular?
Mm.
I think it's part of it.
My sister loves those movies. I watched the movie Pearl recently. Have you guys watched like X or Pearl?
I've seen X. I haven't seen Pearl yet.
I'm too scared.
Oh, it's pretty scary.
I rate monsters, but I can't watch them.
I think what captivates me about the villain in those movies is that she's a girl who grew up under like very strict patriarchy, and she kills men but also like women she's jealous of because she's, I guess, a monstrosified version of like white femininity, like a Karen. Like she's kind of she's gotten to a point where it's too late for her, so then she basically is keeping other people from achieving that monstrous freedom by claiming, like, I guess a negative or murderous monstrous freedom. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I guess it goes both ways. Oh yes, Pearl. Yeah, yeah, I guess where I was going with that is like I guess, yeah, that freedom can go outside of the moral bounds of like the dominant power structure, which isn't really moral, but then it can also just go outside like actual morality. Yeah, I'm interested in a monster that does both, kind of. Since I guess a monster that was like perfectly adherent to our own moral structure, but not the dominant power structure, would kind of be like reifying the concept of a monster as just like yeah, it would be like just, I guess, substituting a different value system, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and there's also a sense in which, we are so a monster that is, say, rebelling against the patriarchy is still in some ways marked by the patriarchy in a way, right? So like when you think of white feminism, it's absolutely kind of marked by the patriarchy in very specific ways. So that all, I feel like, yeah, that can all in works that are the most compelling to me personally, that gets explored too. It's not just you have kind of monstrosity on one side and non-monstrous on the other side. The ways in which they kind of entangle is, to me, the most interesting.
Yeah. I think for me, one of the interesting things is that I think I'm one of those people who, like, I feel like under the right circumstances, almost all of us could become monstrous. And so I think some of the things that are fascinating to me is like what happens when that sort of capability is unleashed. And so I really enjoy corruption arcs. Like I just finished watching Breaking Bad for the second time recently, and that is an sort of an excellent sort of depiction of how utterly someone can change, except also that sort of pride and resentment was in him from the beginning as well, but he just found an outlet for it that turned him into sort of the horrible person that he became. I don't think that's too spoilery.
For me, when we're talking about morality, morality is a myth we tell ourselves, like a story. Because if we look both at the past and at the present, there are very many immoral things that happen right now and that have happened and that shaped us and shaped our history. So morality is basically the carpet and you're hiding all the bad stuff underneath. So being a Greek, okay, how I see a monster operating with the rules or, being shaped by the society and morality. So being Greek, we had the Civil War right after the World War II.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of terrible things happened there. That there was no morality and there was nothing, and it's still a huge like wound and trauma that we don't talk to each other about, because I might have a best friend and they might have been on the opposite side, like their grandparents, and they might have killed my grandparents, and it's a mess.
Mm.
So that's a big thing over there here. And then we have also the familial structures and church. It's Easter here, so I guess it's pertinent. So the church dominating everything and sort of creating this oppressive family society pious thing that very slowly is beginning to change, but very slowly. So the way I write monsters, a lot of times they're very like they are part of ourselves, but they basically the monstrosity represents the intergenerational trauma
Mm.
of all of this stuff channeled through the generations. So basically, the monstrosity is something between something that's hereditary from mother to daughter, which is the thing I love writing, mothers and daughters,
Yeah.
both to channel the history of this country, but also how families operate in Greece. So it's both hereditary and it's shaped by the society and by how the families operate. So for me, a lot of times trauma is the monstrosity that
Yes.
shapes people, and they operate and they interact with society accordingly.
Yeah, that's so true. I'm actually on an intergenerational trauma panel tomorrow, so I do definitely relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
To cite a meme here, there was a tweet I saw recently where it was like people will always support people with mental illness or trauma, but then as soon as you actually show a symptom of your mental illness or trauma, they'll be like, hey, what are you doing?
Mm.
Yeah, I guess often, like, if you've been monstrosified by society, that usually includes traumatic experiences. And I guess when you embrace your freedom, that often happens in problematic ways because of how you've been,
Yeah.
the experiences you've had. Definitely.
Yeah, I think you're right in terms of like trauma as horror in terms of say God, I watched so many horror films and now I have to talk about them and I can't think of any.
I feel you.
But so where the monster is a stand-in basically for trauma, that is really popular for a reason, I think. I know one. Smile.
Mm.
So I have mixed feelings on it, but I do think it's really interesting in terms of the monster in Smile literally being created from trauma. Like you have to have been traumatized to be able to like be pursued by the monster.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to I mean, there are two suggested ways to get rid of it. One of it is to to deliberately traumatize someone else, and the other is to not be around any other people so that nobody else can be traumatized. And I can't remember what my point. I think I was just going to say that this is another section of like the monster as metaphor, and I think it's another reason why horror is so popular, because we are so often exploring these things that we can't actually say out loud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to cite another meme, I saw a tweet where it was like monster movies used to be about like what if there was a guy who stabbed people, and now it's like I'm being chased around my house by the 5 stages of grief.
But sometimes it is still just about a little guy who stabs people. I watched Terrifier.
Mm.
That was horrible.
And just about a guy who stabs people.
Oh, you don't know? Terrifier is about a
Didn't see
horrible
it.
clown that
Oh, okay.
Oh.
It's one of those, it's what you call like a splatter movie.
Mm.
You know? It's really, really horrible.
Yeah.
Interesting but horrible.
Word. Yeah, yeah, going back to what you were saying about trauma and monstrosity, definitely. Like, I think going back to the Minotaur, the Minotaur was created by a traumatic coupling between, I think, Zeus, obviously, because Zeus is just constantly going around, you know. Yeah, a lot of the time monsters are born of trauma, and I guess maybe represent a rupture in the social fabric that maybe even the wrong person is being blamed for. Like, nobody blames Zeus for traumatizing people, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or I think was like I think Minotaur was the physical representation of, you know, not something that is morally accepted at the time, you know. So I feel like it was both born of trauma, but also it could have been, you know, it could have been accepted, but he was an outcast, and so he became a monster on the inside as well. So I think it is a very good representation of an illegitimate child, or the morality that we do not want to acknowledge, that we pretend we are very moral and very proper, and behind all sorts of things can happen, you know.
Yeah, that goes back to trauma and isolation. Because yeah, this monster has to just like be, I guess, siloed away from the rest of society in the labyrinth and only like used as an execution method. Um, yeah, I guess monsters are usually either forced out of society or I guess made to feel like they should isolate themselves.
That's making me think, it's making me want to write. It's about monsters who don't do that, who make connections, who form societies, and what that would look like. I mean, that, it's just making me think about that. Because I think that kind of isolation, that kind of, you're kind of this lone, scary creature. That is kind of like it's baked into our conception of monstrosity. And so, yeah, what would that be like, especially if we're talking about reclaiming some of these tropes to
Mhm.
focus on community and connection in monstrosity?
Well, that's
Yeah,
part of the horror of zombies, isn't it? That there's so many of them, and that
yeah,
they often they're practically a hive mind.
Right.
And same goes for like any kind of hive mind type, like pod people,
hmm
because that is also scary. It's like you're either like isolated in the extreme, or you are forced into a group, and to the extent that you lose your individuality.
yeah.
So
And then in
it
a
would be
zombie
interesting
movie,
to. Sorry.
sorry, I was just gonna note that in a zombie movie, like the goal is usually to like get away from the zombies. So like whoever
Hmm.
like human society is considered to be, they like want the monsters like as far away from them as possible.
Yeah.
In I Am Legend, the zombies, basically zombies, vampires, uh, do actually have an organized society, right? Which is both horror and post-apocalyptic. I want to emphasize on that,
Mm.
just to come back not to this point. So, and they see the last human as the monster,
Yeah.
right? He's their monster because he wants to eliminate them. But they do have a society, and they just operate in their own rules that the human does not understand.
Mm.
So it's again how it bounces back to our human
Yeah.
perception.
Yeah. Vampire communities as well.
Mm-hmm.
Really
Mm-hmm.
interesting. Um, the first thing that came to mind was Anne Rice and how part of the interest in sort of that first trilogy is the complete collapse and dissolution of the relationships between those vampires, but also and then you've got like What We Do in the Shadows, which, while a comedy, is still very much about sort of relationships between the undead. And I do think that Laszlo and Nadia are like peak couple goals. Anyway, yeah, that's interesting. Werewolves have packs. I'm sorry, you've really got me going on this monsters that have communities thing.
Yeah, and the X-Men, they're kind of monsters. They're considered monsters in the world anyway.
Ooh,
That is
interesting.
true. And
I
so
think,
then,
like,
yeah,
setting
that
up-
like what is scarier to the non-monstrous? The monsters that are kind of individual, lawless, you know, without any kind of social bonds at all, or the monsters that have a community.
And I'm interested in the people who are monsters to the monstrous. Like, I think an X-Men that would be Jean Grey, who like is, I guess, the black sheep among like the community of people who are already outcasts.
Someone in the chat mentioned No Gods, No Monsters by Cadwell Turnbull.
Ooh.
It's so good. It's so good. But yes, it's kind of like this organization, but it's an anarchist organization. So good. So good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the one where it might not be this one, but I remember a friend of mine telling me about a book where it is like it's a leftist community, and they basically, if enough of them decide to kill one of the others, then they do it or something. And it's essentially it's like a book about mob mentality, and essentially like an interesting version of like a witch hunt, but fueled by completely opposite principles. I can't remember the name of it though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really interesting to me because, like, I guess in queer community, often when there's like a breakup, for instance, like it can cause this whole schism, or someone can be like, I guess, exiled, and you can just see everybody's trauma responses coming up, and someone gets made into a monster within the community of people who mainstream society has turned into monsters. Difficult.
It sort of works also as the desire for the marginalized person to feel like, "Hey, you know, this is not so bad. Maybe there is worse. I am, you know, I'm okay." So it's a sort of, again, it's like a hereditary trauma, although it's not intergenerational, but it's like giving you more trauma so that they can, you know, feel more normal, I guess, or more mainstream or something like that. So it feels a bit like mirroring.
Yeah, when we were talking about monstrosity as kind of serving to delineate who's on the inside and who's on the outside, that can happen not just on a macro level, but a micro level too within communities that are already kind of deemed monstrous. Yeah.
I think one area where that's really interesting is when it comes to teenagers, but specifically teenage girls as well. There's so many narratives of teenagers turning on each other. I'm thinking of yeah, The Craft is a good example. That's a great example. Jennifer's Body is another good one. Oh, I watched a really interesting, I think it's called You Are Not My Mother or something, and someone's mum gets replaced by a changeling, and she's also getting bullied, and then her mum as changeling starts to kill the bullies, and it's all a whole... Yeah, that, I think that's really interesting in terms of, yeah, I think we've come full circle to the idea of like monsters having to be like inherently an out group.
The changeling myth,
I-
definitely, as a neurodivergent person who might have been labeled a changeling back in the day, like, and in fact, I mean, this is such a shameless plug, but I wrote a novella about it. It's called Family Curse. It's about like every generation there's like a changeling, but then like it's more about genetic neurodivergence within the family that manifests more in some people, and it gets stigmatized.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. I always go for the changeling myth.
But a short story example on what Helen said. I will mention Mothers Lock Up Your Daughters Because They're Terrifying by Alice Ole Kim,
Yes, yes, yes.
which is, I think, 3 or 4 girls, I'm not sure, who are Korean American adoptees, and they're all deemed sort of, an outcast in their society. And they all call upon the spirit of their mother, which is, I don't know, it's a creature that, inhabits their bodies and talks to them through their own mouths. So I'm gonna spoil everything now. I'm sorry. So even though these girls are outcasts in their, extended society, there is one that stands out in the end. We don't know it at first, but there is a lot of trauma within one specific girl who hides it during most of the story. And in the end, this is the girl that accepts the mother all by herself to fix her. And so she becomes both the uber monster, for example, because only her now is inhabited by the mother. The mother leaves the other girls alone, but she's also the most mainstream looking because the mother teaches her how to be a proper girl and how to fit in. But inside there is mother driving her basically, telling her exactly what to do. So it's like, and the other two girls know that or sort of know that. It's not clear how much of it they understand, but they probably suspect what's going on. But she's completely isolated by the end of the story because she's her and the mother as one entity now.
There's a book I wanted to recommend too along those same lines called We Ride Upon Sticks by Quan Berry. And it takes place in the 1980s in Danvers, Massachusetts, which is near Salem, Massachusetts. And it's about a group of field hockey players, high school field hockey players who make a deal with the devil to win the championship, or kind of. They write their name in a book, which is actually a notebook with Emilio Estevez on the cover. It's fantastic. And one of the girls has very sprayed 1980s hair, and the hair itself becomes an entity that kind of like tries to get them to do things. And it's super, it has, it's very intersectional. And it also is written in the first person plural, which just blew my mind. It's from the point of view of the team as a whole, like we did this. It's so, so good. So, but in that same sense of, teenage girlhood itself. Monstrous.
Oh yeah. I think we're supposed to end panels at 50. So I mean, do people want to make any wrap up comments, shameless plugs, etc.?
We're all being so polite.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be rude. I will plug my Patreon, which is patreon.com/Afrophantasia. And I think my wrap-up comment would be, I could talk about this literally all day. And it has been such a pleasure and a joy to talk about monsters with you all.
And you can put your Patreon in the chat, and also there's I think we're in the room Toast, so like we should totally all drop our links there as well.
Okay.
Nope, no plug for me. But if you want to see some monster stories that I wrote, you can look at my website, jenniferhudackwrites.com.
Awesome.
I think my plug will be salt water because that's mostly story I have out on tor.com. And my site is evgeniatriantafylou.com, or Foxes and Roses on Twitter. This was a great panel, by the way.
Yes,
Great,
I had so
thank
much
you.
So
fun.
wonderful.
All the memes. We
Yep.
should just do a meme panel. Sorry, tenacity.
Oh yeah, my shameless plug is my novella that came out this autumn. Like I said, it's about the changeling myth and neurodivergence. It's like it goes through different time periods in like a journal format, and it has a bunch of footnotes, which I always try to fit in somehow. I'll put the I'll put the link in the chat and also in the Toasts Discord. Yeah, this has been so amazing, you guys. So glad to have met every single one of you. I feel like we got so deep into the tropes and like deconstructions of said.
Yeah, this was amazing.